Nevada Realtors, Chris Bishop here, your co-host, Trey host, sure, okay, of It's Not Soup Yet, and we're still cooking in the kitchen. Would you say that we had more ingredients added in the last few weeks than ever before? Over 100 bills added to the session. What say you?
Well, let's put it this way, right? The ingredients are out on the counter, right? You can't add any more except for a few little splishes and splashes of salt and pepper everywhere here and there. But, we're in the midst of it all.
Yeah.
Right? Some things
the stock has been boiled. The seasonings have been added. It's starting to smell, but it's not quite soup yet.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well, as you can tell, I'm drowning in metaphors on this show. But let's talk a little real quick about a bill, Keith, that you went up and testified for in support of. AB 213 aims to speed up the land use and planning application process. Tell us a little bit about that, and what did you tell legislators?
What I told them very eloquently is that we support this bill 100%. It is, it's all about, when you talk to people, I think we can all agree that the process gets bogged down. And the process being getting plans and approvals, and a lot of that is they don't have the staff. But even prior to that, it just takes too long, and money is involved when it takes too long. And so we hope to speed things up and yet still preserve, because we have to be respectful, preserving things like the rural designations of the Northwest. And that was in its entirety. Those that opposed it are opposed to it because they are fearful that their rural way of life and their rural designations will go away.
Sure.
Yeah. So it's a balancing act, but yeah.
We saw the president come into Nevada and designate a brand new federal park. And so I definitely see the value. A lot of people, go out and tour land here in Southern Nevada and Northern Nevada and wonder why is this vacant land not being used, and don't realize it's BLM or,
It's a federal park. All of Nevada.
Could
federal
be, yeah.
park.
And so land planning is important, and that does definitely help the cause for sure. Tom, what bills were
you hear all the time about 85% of the land is owned by the federal government? Well, yeah, Yucca Mountain. You want to build a house on frickin' Yucca Mountain? I'll pass. But how about the test site? Let's go out to the test site and build some duplexes. Now pass on that too. So it's not just that easy. The buildable land that we have is not that much here. So rant the Ravens over.
Well, forget about what bill I'm trying. Hundreds of bills are being tracked. But more importantly, I wanted to talk to Keith about his great time with legal aid and Sandra about 298. I mean, that's a bill we've been working on for really almost a year, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, Sandra Howdeggy led it off just beautifully by saying, you got to give some and you got to get some. And you don't always get everything you want, and you don't always have to give everything you want. And this is a perfect bill for that. Is it something that we're 1,000% gleeful over? No, not 1,000%, but we're pretty happy about it. The things that we had to give, I think, are things that we're not really giving up a lot, because I don't think they really could have existed anyway. And so when I hear people out there opposing this, and there's our organizations that are out there opposing it, they're infants. It's their children fighting in the sandbox because they didn't get their way. They don't get everything that happened. Well, life doesn't work that way, and the legislative process doesn't work that way. So to them, I respectfully say, and maybe not so respectfully say, grow up. This is part of the legislative process, and there are people that have opposing views, and this is a great bill to that end. We're probably all a little bit not so happy with it, and that makes good legislation.
Hey, even for Goldilocks, some of the porridge was too hot and some was too cold. So
some was just right.
We'll make it all come together. But I like the example that Tom brought up, because that's a prime example of a group that we had staunch opposition to in some sessions, and now has become an ally on this bill in this session. And so good on you guys for making that happen. And sometimes you find friends in the strangest places.
Right. Well, here's the thing. Without going there and just saying no, and just arbitrarily just saying we don't like something, we're finally, I think, grown up enough to be able to sit at a table and discuss issues with other people that have opposing views, hear what they have to say, them hearing what we have to say, and then discussing how to meet in the middle so that everybody gets what they want. It's not always, perfect for everybody, but in this case, the issues to be in the 298 is, a 10% increase in rent max for senior citizens and others. But let's face it, who's raising their rates more than 10%? Now they did it after COVID,
Sure.
rightfully so, because we had 2 years of not being able to raise any rents, and some people hadn't even paid rents. So they were trying to play catch up, but that's over with. I don't see us unless the government really fails in trying to curtail the way the cost of living is going. We're 10% there, and it's a backstop.
Well, think how long in our marketplace the cost of living has remained extremely low.
Yeah.
We've had a massive surplus, 6,000 a month coming from out of state that are moving here because of that reason. The tax basis in Nevada is so low compared to some of our neighboring states. And so it would stand to reason sooner or later rents were going to go up anyway because they remained in that soup water. And so I don't agree with you on that.
Yeah, a couple things. First, we get lumped into the apartment complex, and that's not right. When you hear the 20 and 30% increases, which are real, those are not single family mom and pop landlords raising their prices 20 to 30%. Those are apartment complexes, and so we're stuck because we can't by peeling off the mom and pops, those that own 4 and under. We're stuck fighting that battle. So that's number one. Number two, those single family mom and pops, they are talking to their tenants. They know the most expensive thing that can happen to them is them having to find another tenant. And so they will do most anything to not have that happen. And so they're talking to them about the raises, and they're preparing them, and they're doing those types of things. And then, and finally, if you want to affect change, and I've only been doing this for 25 years, and we've been talking about this stuff for 25 years. If you want to affect change, you can't just say no, and you can't just say yes. Those legislators that are just so constantly saying no and so constantly saying yes are ignored in the process. Who cares about them? I already know they're going to say no, and I already know they're going to say yes. If you want to affect change, you go in there and you work on some, and you got to give and you got to get.
So I do have to say one thing, though, on the comment you just made about it's not typically the single family homeowners. I mean, I'm a property manager. And what I saw was that because of COVID, when I had a tenant that was paying, who wasn't causing any issues, who was just happy, and that rent was coming in, I didn't pay a whole lot of anything, right? I mean, many of my owners were just happy that they were receiving their rents. And I think you got to remember that was 3 or 4 years. That a typical lease, you would have a 4, 5, maybe even 6, 7% escalation of the rent. And when you let 3 or 4 years go by not doing that, and then all of a sudden, the market resets and people are back in there, it makes sense why you'd have 15, 16% or more because the rents have escalated that much. So yeah. I think you guys are right. I think you're doing the right things looking at it. I want to highlight one thing, Keith, and this is special. An incredible individual who's a Realtor Champion is Senate Majority Leader Nicole Canizario. This is somebody that, because of issues years ago that we were dealing with, came in, sat at the table with the realtors, sat down and said, I want to understand your position on the issues. This is somebody, a great example of who we turn into a Realtor Champion. And I'm proud of that. And I know that you are too, Keith, because we were sitting at that table. And I think you even were too, Tom, as a local president. But look at the amount of bills, 34 bills that she introduced so far. A lot of legislation going on from her side of it. And another great Realtor Champion for sure.
Yeah, I'm very, very proud of the fact that both majority leaders are Realtor Champions. The Senator and Assemblywoman Howdeggy, both Realtor Champions, and very, very proud of that. And it shows the effectiveness of what we've done. And I'll tell you a little story. A few years back, we had a little bit of a rocky session when I was president of the association. We had some landlord-tenant stuff that came out. We had a midnight committee that gutted one bill and threw in a bunch of crap that we had shut down from before. But out of that session, Senator Julia Ratty, who was pioneered a lot of that stuff, came to us because, yeah, we took some lumps, but we were very, very effective in our messaging. She came to us and said, I don't want to go through that again. I want to work with you. And she actually became, she had different philosophies than we did, but she really pushed that to say, I want to work with the realtors. So very proud of that stuff and how we do things.
Well, you can smell it cooking, and it's getting ready to switch houses pretty soon. So just remember.
Boy, it smells getting pretty good. I don't know. Tommy's up to some good stuff in that kitchen. I don't know what's in there, but
it'll be interesting to see because we are about ready to switch houses, right? It's going to get out of committee, back on the floor, and then voted over to the other side of the house for it to continue. So there's some possibility for some ingredients to be knocked off the counter, right? And not be put into the soup. So
yeah,
we're sitting pretty
things
good.
change.
I'm happy with what's going on right now.
Yeah.
There are some people that are rumbling and complaining because that's what they do, because they don't want to see any change. They want to have it left alone. But that's just not reality, right? So we'll go on trying to a proper change.
And I call them the wah-wahs. Wah-wah, I didn't get my way. Wah-wah. So, sounds like Chris with Amy. Wah-wah, I didn't get my way, Amy.
Well, folks, here's been another episode of this amazing podcast show. And if you haven't figured it out yet, I'm paid by the metaphor. So just remember, whether you're here or somewhere else, it ain't soup yet.
Yep.
Yeah, Amy owes me another $1.